In the headlines tonight, Acting Prime Minister Bradshaw says Barbadians can now make deposits again. 3 new cases of COVID-19 confirmed, bringing the overall number to 66. A local garment factory focused on making masks for the general public. And in sports, today is World Playthrough Day, and it was dedicated to combating COVID-19.
Broadcasting from our studios in the Pine St. Michael, this is CBC Newsnight, starting now.
Very good evening to you. I'm Lisa Broom. Thanks for joining us. After observing the way Barbadians have been conducting their business over the last 2 days, particularly with the supermarket pickups and post office collections, government has expressed some concern. Well, this afternoon, Acting Prime Minister Bradshaw addressed the nation on the issues faced and outlined some adjustments, including the availability of ATMs for depositing.
Fellow Barbadians, since the adjustments were made on Tuesday, just like you, we've been monitoring the situation across Barbados to look at the response that many Barbadians have been having in dealing with the changes that we have been making. Like you, we are also concerned as a government. I must say that many of the people across the country have been adhering to the physical distancing guidelines, but we do have some challenges. And in discussions with the retailers at a number of the supermarkets across the country, what we've been noticing is that they've been actually having some difficulties in being able to meet a number of the orders, whether online, whether via telephone, or whether via WhatsApp messages. They have been coping, but there are challenges. And as I would have said on Tuesday, there were obviously a backup of orders that many of them would have had, which is now added to the additional burden of persons being able to order through the respective mediums. As a consequence, over the course of the last 24 hours, we've continued our discussions with the retailers. We've put forward some suggestions. They've also made some recommendations. Those discussions are continuing. And I want to give you the assurance that within the course of the next 48 hours, certainly at the earliest by Saturday, the intention is to speak to the country so that you can make preparations both as shoppers and also retailers to know what will happen in the course of the next few days and next few weeks. With respect to the long lines that we saw yesterday and certainly continuing today at the various post offices across the country, I too am concerned about the number of pensioners that have been queuing on the streets. We've made arrangements from yesterday to extend the opening hours for the post offices. There are many of the post offices that accommodated persons beyond the closing times yesterday, and we do appreciate them for their concern for the elderly. But the numbers were simply quite large, and as a consequence, we extended the hours to be able to accommodate those persons today. I know that many of the persons at the post office have indicated that they will try to accommodate as well the persons who are there today to ensure that pensions are able to access their funds as well. We've instituted a system where we have additional workers on staff to be able to meet the demand. We've also ensured that at specific locations where it could be accommodated, we've taken the opportunity to be able to erect some tents, because we know that, of course, the sun is very hot, and obviously we want to ensure that persons are still comfortable while they are practicing the physical distancing and while they're waiting to be able to be tended by the post office. We also have a situation where our banks, we responded to a number of persons who had concerns regarding the inability to be able to do deposits at the banks. And I'm pleased to report that the Attorney General as well as the finance team have been in discussions with the banking sector, and they have agreed to accommodate the deposits for persons to be able to fulfill those during both daytime and also at night. We understand at this time the difficulty that Barbadians are enduring as a result of the changes that have been made. We understand that this is a very fluid situation. There's no perfect solution, but I want to assure you that we're continuing to work together with all of the stakeholders to be able to find solutions to the problems. Barbadians, I ask you to just be patient, work with us, be respectful as you have been thus far of the police, of the authorities, and simply to be patient, because we are in this together, and the only way that we're going to be able to find the solutions to the challenges that lie ahead is if we recognize where we are and what it is that together as a nation we all have to do to be able to get back on track. So I thank you, and I hope that you go safely and enjoy your Easter weekend.
At least one local commercial bank has announced that it will be reopening to the public on selected days starting next week. CIBC First Caribbean made the announcement today, as the bank also revealed that it will now facilitate check deposits at 3 of its branches, in response to the many requests and following consultations. Now, in a statement, the bank says both check and cash deposits will be accepted. However, clearance times may take a bit longer than usual because of the present curfew. The bank has also announced that as of next week, its branches at Wilde, Warrens, Speightstown and Sheraton will be open on Wednesday, April 15th through to Friday, April 17th from 9 a.m. until 12 noon. Thereafter, the banks will be opened 3 days per week. The Finance Centre at Rendezvous will open for the same time periods. Well, CIBC says the ATMs at these branches will be facilitating both withdrawals and deposits, but accessing the funds may take a little bit longer. Barbados has recorded 3 new COVID-19 cases, bringing to 66 the number of cases on the island. This as health officials report some new symptoms they want people to look out for. COVID-19 czar Richard Carter made the revelation to CBC News today.
As of today, we have conducted 694 tests for COVID-19. We have diagnosed 66 positive cases, so this is an increase of 3 over yesterday's total when I believe we didn't have any cases. The 66 cases are 32 males and 34 females. The age range is 7 to 95 years of age. 11 COVID-19 cases have recovered, so we have an additional number of persons who were discharged as of today, and we have unfortunately registered 3 deaths.
Well, regarding the new cases, Mr. Carter says 2 are 25 years old and the other is 36 years old. They all returned to the island from the United Kingdom on March 20th. 2 of them responded to the Ministry of Health's call to contact authorities, and the third called into the COVID-19 hotline. Mr. Carter says based on investigations with these individuals, health officials are adding loss of smell and taste to the list of symptoms for which people should look out.
So these 2 25-year-olds essentially did not have the typical symptoms we've been talking about of cough and fever and shortness of breath. They actually presented with loss of smell and loss of taste, which basically disappeared after a couple of days, the symptoms that is. This is really important because it is demonstrating to us that there may be persons out there who may have these symptoms and may be dismissing them as something else. But it is possible, if these people have a travel history, that they may have been exposed to and have been infected by COVID-19. So even more important for those persons who are in that range of persons traveling on those dates to come forward and register with us.
He says overall, people who traveled within the mentioned time period have responded well to the call to come forward, and they've also heeded the message to self-quarantine. However, in keeping with the protocol, they're not being tested unless they present with symptoms. Now, on a related matter, the COVID-19 czar says the Ministry of People Empowerment is being placed under significant strain by those who are attempting to abuse the system for issuing passes to care for the elderly.
We are seeing cases of persons asking for up to 9 passes to look after a single individual, and the Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs has basically placed a cap on the number of passes that can be given for any one individual, any one elderly person, and is appealing really to the population of Barbados to exercise a bit of judgment in this and not to overburden the system, because the more of these passes that are given, the more difficult it is to maintain the principles of people staying inside if they don't absolutely have to be out. We've also had persons applying for passes, and when the investigation is done, these are people who really have no elderly relatives at all but want to get the passes basically to avail themselves of the opportunity of being on the road.
With other garment factories making face masks for frontline personnel, Yankee Garments has directed its attention to catering to the general public. Assistant Manager Anna Hajati says the company only started making the items this week after several requests. She says around 300 masks are produced daily at its Newton plant.
The demand so far for the masks has been overwhelming. It's been incredible, but overwhelming. We have received, at this point, thousands of inquiries and requests, and we are, we're trying to handle as many as possible. But given the high demand, there is going to be some level of delay in responses, to prospective orders.
The assistant manager at Yankee Garments revealed several jobs have been preserved through the mask-making initiative.
We were able to bring 10 in total, including one director, one manager, 2 workers in the cutting room, and 6 machine operators. So we've been able to bring those persons back out to work for the time being. We will continue on this path until further instructions are given with regards to the curfew and being able to start back up full time.
Since the announcement was made by Acting Prime Minister Santia Bradshaw that supermarkets would now be offering delivery services and various packages, as well as alternative online ways to shop, Barbadians have been stocking their pantries with goods. Well, CBC is here to inform and educate during this pandemic. And in tonight's first edition of Coping with COVID-19, Shane Jones looks at some best practices when bringing groceries into the home.
Now, while the World Health Organization stresses it is not certain how long the virus survives on surfaces, studies suggest it may persist for a few hours or up to several days. The WHO advises the length of time may vary under different conditions like the type of surface, temperature, or humidity of the environment. The organization also says the likelihood of an infected person contaminating commercial goods is low, and the risk of catching COVID-19 from a package that has been moved, traveled, and exposed to different conditions and temperature is also low. But since the virus can stay on surfaces for quite some time, there are certain precautions that should be observed when bringing groceries into the home. Here are some steps that many health officials suggest you take to limit your exposure to coronavirus when dealing with groceries. Wash non-porous containers. Now, while there's no current hard evidence to support the transmission of the virus from food packaging, it can't hurt to wipe down some non-porous containers like glass or cans with disinfectant wipes. Now, after putting away all the groceries, packaging, including paper, boxes and bags, wash your hands, counter, and other surfaces you've touched. To be extra careful, you can also wash your hands after opening the containers and using their contents. Rubbing fruit and vegetables under running water and scrubbing those with hard skins can help a lot. Now, even if a grocery store or warehouse is thoroughly cleaned on a regular basis, the delivery person needs to take the same precautions to prevent the spread of the virus. Arrange to have the items delivered to your doorstep or a place nearby instead of a direct handoff. You should pay online wherever possible, so you don't have to hand the delivery person money. These are some helpful tips for coping with COVID-19.
Measures similar to those which apply to grocery shopping have been put in place to ensure Barbadians have access to fresh produce, vegetables and meat from the island's farmers. Minister of Agriculture and Food Security Indar Ware says his ministry has been working to assist farmers at this time. He was speaking during CBC TV8's Morning Barbados.
At the BADMC, for example, Barbados Agriculture Development and Marketing Corporation, they have arranged for telephone calls. There's a dedicated telephone line where people can place their orders. There are also opportunities for people to use WhatsApp messages, and they can send emails as well. This information is being published on BADMC website. We will have some public service announcements coming out. They're doing their own marketing via social media as well. And persons can place orders. There will be deliveries 2 days a week, which will be Tuesdays and Thursdays. Today being Holy Thursday, so it will be the last Thursday before they start back next week, and they are doing on Saturday as well.
Minister Ware is telling small farmers who usually deliver produce to their customers that they can do so, but they should ensure that they have their farmer's ID in their possession.
small farmers. Once you have your farmer's ID, then you can take your orders from your customers by WhatsApp, by telephone, and you're allowed to deliver things like eggs and fresh milk and fresh meat to your customers. You may also use the BADMC if you are supplying to them as well. Brighton Farm has closed, but they're taking online orders. They're taking orders from their customers and they're supplying to the supermarkets. And they have set pickup times. Vegco as well, similar, and Star Chick as well, all similar operations. So all in all, I believe that with the curbside pickups and the home deliveries, farmers are still able to move their produce.
As Holy Week climaxes in the coming hours with Good Friday and then Easter celebrations, a local religious leader says Barbadians should use the period for spiritual strengthening. Apostle Mark White of Tower of Power Global Network Ministries shared the advice during an interview with CBC News. Although unable to have a physical fellowship tomorrow, Apostle White says the church will continue with virtual services.
In terms of services, we can't do much, so we have to do the virtual meetings. So we'll be streaming tomorrow at 9 o'clock and for our Good Friday service. And then on Sunday again, Sunday in the morning, 10 o'clock, we'll be there for the resurrection Sunday morning. And of course, streaming, that would be.
Barbadians have been using the alternative measures put in place to acquire groceries and other essentials for their households. Some impoverished citizens are finding it difficult to make ends meet during the hardships of the pandemic. Well, thankfully, there have been some philanthropic initiatives undertaken by Barbadians at this time. One of them is the Pantry Project put on by the Barbados Labour Party's League of Young Socialists. President Kevin Henry explains.
Over the last few weeks, few days, we've been in contact with people who've reached out to us for assistance. And we as an organization thought it necessary to find ways to assist them. And one such way was to reach out to our various networks of friends and members to find ways that we could assist these people who are clearly now in need, probably for the first time in their lives. What we did then is people donated things from their pantries and their cupboards, and we went around, we collected them and then donated them to the families in need. And we go on today now and announcing it to the general public so that more of you can be involved in the activities that we're doing and provide greater assistance to other families who are now making themselves known who are also in need. We feel like if you want to be involved, you could come and contact us at our email address, lys.thepantryproject@gmail.com, and get involved and help make an impact on some other people's lives.
Well, 66 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Barbados. Social distancing is being enforced to try to stop its spread. Working from home is becoming more prevalent. Among the first people given the option were considered those most vulnerable, people with underlying medical conditions that make them more susceptible to the virus. Well, our sports editor, Sean Green, is among those working from home, and he spoke with me about the experience so far.
Every day I liaise with the CBC producers in sports, radio or television. So between myself and them, we both have an idea of I have an idea of what is expected of me, or if there's something I want to work on, I will give them an idea of what to expect. So we both know what to expect of each other. And then from there, I use my cell phone, and this is my CBC cell phone and my own personal laptop as a backup. So every day I have a list of contacts that I want to get in contact with on a daily basis. I go ahead and make my calls. I get them to record the audio and send it to me with any video or photos to accompany, and so on. What I also do that is very important is I make sure that I shut out as many distractions as possible. You're at home and it's easy to get distracted. So no TV, no radio, nothing like that. I just set up my clock so that I can see what time I start and what time I finish, so that I can take a break in between and continue working. But that is what I do. No TV, no radio, and I just work for a particular time. I stop, take a break, and then I continue to work again.
As somebody who's now been working from home for just over a week, as you said, what advice would you give to people? Say, like myself, if I have to do it, I don't know if I'm as disciplined, because I probably would try to work from the couch while snacking and watching TV. So what advice would you have for people who are now opting to do this?
I would say discipline, discipline, discipline. It has been just 7 days for me, but I discipline myself from day one because I tell myself that I am still at work. I'm just in a different environment, but I am still at work. And with that, it was fairly easy for me to discipline, but you cannot do it unless you discipline. And it also helps with your concentration because there are some external distractions, like things that are happening outside of my house, noises and stuff coming in, but I have no control over. I can control my environment inside the house with no TV and so on. So again, that comes from discipline too, and it also helps with your concentration because with the external noises, you have to concentrate even harder. And I'm telling myself that, I am still at work. And also, how do I say this? I know that there are some across Barbados and maybe across the world that would see the time away from the office as sort of a holiday. You have to dispel that thought because it is not a holiday. There are sometimes, Lisa, because of the technology that I don't have available to me here at home than I would at CBC. It takes even longer to do a news story at home than it would at work. And that is where discipline and time management comes in. But for me, it has been fairly easy. And as the days go on, it gets easier because it now becomes routine.
That's our sports editor there, Sean Green, talking to me about working from home. And still to come, CARFA is happy with the response of regional public health systems to COVID-19. But before we get to that, here is a tip from Cooperators General Insurance.
This tip of the day is brought to you by Cooperators General Insurance Company Limited. Insurance the way you want it to be.
Do not lean against or hang on someone's wheelchair or scooter. Bear in mind that people with disabilities treat their wheelchairs or scooters as extensions of their bodies. This tip is brought to you in association with the Barbados Council for the Disabled.
The Caribbean Public Health Agency is pleased with the response by public health systems across the region to COVID-19. Executive Director Dr. Joy St. John says the pandemic has shown what the systems are capable of. The head of CARFA says testing remains critical, but she has made it clear they don't do random testing. Dr. St. John says the Caribbean testing is done based on sound public health principles.
Following the case definition, contact tracing of those who are found to be positive, and extending the rings of contacts where that is concerned, and then being guided by those rings of importance of testing to follow where there are geographical, as Italy said, clusters.
When Dr. St. John was speaking during a live webinar hosted by the Caribbean Broadcasting Union on the current status and future trends for COVID-19. PAHO WHO representative to Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean, Dr. Etadis Gerber, says as they continue to do testing, they must also keep identifying those who are most vulnerable.
We know from the studies in China, Italy, other places, what is the trend of this infection? Who do have higher risk of infection, severity of infection? It is currently older adults and then people with comorbidities like illnesses, which I mentioned, chronic diseases, diabetes, hypertension of that nature. Therefore, we have to protect those individuals.
Well, there's a call in Grenada tonight for compassion following reports of threats made against people who have tested positive for COVID-19. Families of those affected are now fearful for their lives. We have a report from GBN Grenada.
Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell made a fervent plea to people to be sensitive to others as the country copes with the pandemic.
We have received some reports from the families of those affected by the virus that they have been threatened and insulted in their communities. Friends, we have to keep our distance, yes. But let us not go down to the road to anarchy and insensitivity.
Dr. Mitchell made a clarion call for Grenadians to let good sense prevail, especially at this time. He reminds people that what may be their neighbor's pitfall today may become yours tomorrow.
Make a strong appeal, therefore, on behalf of all our citizens, and in particular, our affected families, to anyone engaged in such disturbing behavior, to cease and desist from such negativity. This is not who we are as a people.
Hurricane Dorian survivors in the Bahamas say the COVID-19 pandemic has dealt them another severe blow as they struggle to get back on their feet. Our news reports.
After this lockdown, I didn't know the money. I don't even know I could go back in the shop.
Bronson Williams lost everything when Hurricane Dorian pulverized Abaco last September. He was barely starting to get back on his feet before the coronavirus pandemic grounded the country's economy to a halt.
When the job shut down, I thought it would have been like for maybe a couple of days. I didn't know this was that serious.
The 41-year-old had just landed a job after months of searching. He hadn't been working for a month when the ferry business that employed him was ordered shut by government. With his money running out, Williams says getting help from government agencies has been a difficult task.
We're really depending on them like that on the level right now. We can then Buffy commit suicide right here.
Williams lives with his partner, LaShawn McIntosh, in a tent inside an unoccupied home in Marsh Harbor.
We ain't know when we could be in a situation when the people can say, well, look here, we need a place.
McIntosh also knows deep hardship. She lost her 8-year-old son, Lashino Dean, during the monster storm. Homeless and jobless, the 38-year-old struggled to find work. Eventually, she found a job as a cleaner at a clinic in Abaco. But the virus threat is another massive setback.
I don't have any hope. You know, like after Dorian, and then I have this virus going on, and jobs slow down and things like that.
And you still ain't got nowhere to live.
Don't have anywhere to live. You know, I feel like everything just gone. I feel like I don't have any hope.
The fallout from the coronavirus shutdown is widespread, with thousands losing their jobs as layoffs continue nationwide.
Over to Guyana now. The coalition, a partnership for national unity, Alliance for Change, has called for a full audit of the ballot boxes from the March 2nd general and regional elections. The ruling party says it views as absolute hypocrisy the private sector commission's condemnation of a national recount of votes. We have a report from NCN News.
The coalition APNU-AFC says it views with great consternation the insistence by the Private Sector Commission, PSC, that a national recount of votes is a waste of time. In a statement on Tuesday night, the coalition states that this simplistic posture of the PSC not only abrogates the transparency they claim to seek, but has removed the veil of neutrality in which it ought to be cloaked, and incontrovertibly identifies that entity as a mere stooge of the opposition PPPC. The coalition says the PSC's political bias does not allow them to acknowledge that there were discrepancies in other districts, which led to the APNU-AFC asking for a recount in districts 3 and 6, amongst others, which was refused by returning officers. The coalition said it was President David Granger who initiated efforts for the national recount, since it would give Guyanese from District 1 to 10 the assurance that their votes are accounted for, since any government elected would be a government of all the people. It also maintains that GCOM, as an independent agency, must be allowed to do its work, a position reiterated by APNU-AFC campaign co-chair Joseph Harmon during a media conference.